The four afterlives of the Bible. Why was hell not in the Old Testament? Throughout the Bible, there are many mentions of other gods who tempt and sway the children of Israel away from the God of Israel. In this continuing series, Gods of the Bible, we will go over who these gods are, where these gods come from, and how these gods affect the Bible. Previously, we covered Hades, the word the New Testament uses to describe hell. We discussed the historic source of the word hell, and how hell was the English translation of Hades in the Bible. Why was hell not in the Old Testament? Throughout the Bible, the biblical writers used different names to represent different afterlives that souls would go to once they died. The Bible specifically names four afterlives: Sheol, Gehenna, Hades, and heaven. These four distinct afterlives progress and expand as the story of the Bible moves through time. The first afterlife that every soul went to was Sheol. Sheol was the place of holding for all souls until the time of final judgment. Sheol is described as a gray world where the souls that would inhabit it would become withered into shades or shadows. The souls of the wicked would go to Gehenna, the fiery pit described in the Old Testament. Gehenna was a place of waiting for the souls of the wicked until the time of final judgment. Gehenna finds its name in a physical place, the Valley of Ben Hinnom, which was the valley near Jerusalem where the ancient Israelites sacrificed children to Moloch in human sacrifice. The last named afterlife that was not heaven was Hades, which was the word that was used to describe the lake of fire, which is what we as modern people call hell. The word Hades is used in the New Testament due to the New Testament being originally written in Koine Greek. Hell is a word that is not found in the original translation of the Bible, but was an English word rooted in the Germanic and Old Norse words hel from Old Norse mythology. This translation happened with Tyndale in the 16th century and in the King James Bible in the 17th century. The translators of the Bible to English erroneously combined Sheol, Gehenna, and Hades into a singular English word, hell. Hades, or hell as we know it now, was the word used to describe the final place of punishment, the lake of fire. The lake of fire was the final place of punishment after the time of final judgment. That would mean that Sheol and Gehenna were places of waiting until the time of final judgment, and heaven and Hades were the places of final placement after the time of final judgment. But if Hades was a word used in the New Testament used to represent the lake of fire, then where does the lake of fire come from? The Old Testament does not mention the lake of fire, nor does the idea of hell in a modern sense occur in the Old Testament. If hell is not in the Old Testament, then when was hell created? To understand why hell was not in the Old Testament, we must first understand what is in the Old Testament. Like mentioned previously, Sheol and Gehenna were the place of temporary waiting until the time of final judgment. All souls went to either Sheol or Gehenna. However, much like Hades or hell, Gehenna came about later in the Old Testament. This leaves a particular question. Was Gehenna and hell created after Sheol? And for what purpose were these places created? The Bible is mostly silent about the progression of the afterlives, but with the rabbinical text and the Bible itself, we can begin to understand what happened. Sheol appears first in the Bible, and then later we learn about the pit of fire that is later named Gehenna. In the Bible, there is no real mention of creation, but if one looks at the Book of Enoch, an answer becomes apparent. The Book of Enoch is an ancient Jewish text that predates the New Testament and the compilation of the Bible by several centuries. The Book of Enoch does find its place in the Ethiopian Bible, which is considered one of the oldest and most complete Bibles in the world. The Book of Enoch is the story of Enoch, Noah's great-grandfather, and his journey through heaven. Before Enoch was taken by God, the sons of God, the Watchers, lusted after the daughters of man and married them. From their marriage came their children, the Nephilim, or giants as described in the Bible. The Nephilim had primitive souls, as their souls did not find their origin in heaven. Because of their primitive souls, they could not go to heaven. In the Book of Enoch, there is actually a fifth afterlife, where the good and evil souls were divided by a canyon in Sheol. There was no Gehenna yet, just like the biblical tradition. When the Nephilim died, they could not go to heaven, and there was no hell or Hades. The Book of Enoch states that the Nephilim became the evil spirits of the world that tempt mankind to do evil. This leaves a serious problem: what to do with the evil spirits that are on the earth? The Bible gives an answer: Gehenna. Gehenna was created to house the evil spirits of the Nephilim and the evil spirits of the earth. This would explain why the Bible is silent as to the creation of Gehenna, and suggests the need to create a place to house the evil spirits of the Nephilim. If this is a possible explanation about the creation of the fiery pit, then what about Hades or hell? It is clear that in the Book of Enoch there is no Gehenna nor hell, so there was not yet a place to house the evil spirits. The Bible also does not have a hell in the Old Testament either. This is a tradition that holds true even in Judaism today. If ancient and modern Judaism do not believe in hell, and this is supported with a lack of hell in the Old Testament, then when was hell created? The answer to that question, we must first determine what the purpose of hell is. The purpose of hell is twofold. The first and primary purpose of hell is to house Lucifer and the fallen angels, and the second purpose is to house the souls of the wicked after the time of final judgment. If the primary purpose of hell is to house Lucifer and the fallen angels, then that would give a time frame of when hell was created. But there is a serious problem. In ancient and modern Judaism, there is no Lucifer nor a fall of angels. This begs the question as to why they do not believe in Lucifer and the fall. The answer to that question can be found in the book of Job. In Job, Satan goes to heaven. Satan goes into the council of archangels, the princes of heaven, enter God's throne room, and speaks to God directly. The fact that Satan is allowed to enter heaven at all is in direct conflict to the idea that Satan and the fallen angels have been banished from heaven after the rebellion. To understand why a Satan was allowed in heaven is simple. Satan is a title, not a person. Satan is a title meaning adversary. Job is speaking about how Satan was an adversary to humans, not God. This Satan has not fallen, and that is the reason why he is allowed in God's throne room. With Job, we learn that Satan is a title, and that Satans are allowed in heaven, and allowed in God's throne room to speak with God directly, and that is because they had not fallen. If the Satans had not fallen yet, then that leaves the question of when did they fall? In part, the answer can be found in Isaiah. Isaiah is unique as it is one of the only passages in the Bible that names a particular Satan, Lucifer. The Bible goes out of its way not to name Satans directly, since there are many adversaries and therefore many Satans. However, it is in Isaiah that we first learn of a fall and a rebellion. But what is interesting about Isaiah is the language Isaiah uses to describe the fall. Isaiah specifically uses future tense language when describing the fall. Isaiah uses words such as "they shall say," not that they have said, and "you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit," not that he has been brought down to the pit. This language continues, "those who see you will gaze at you," not "those who see you have gazed at you." Isaiah 14, in the greater context of Isaiah, is prophesying of the future events and future fall of Babylon. Taking the language used by Isaiah and the context of future prophetic events, then it makes it clear that at the very least, Lucifer has not fallen until the time of Isaiah. If Isaiah is speaking of future events, then when would Lucifer have fallen? Biblical historians have argued that Lucifer fell when he tempted Jesus. Many historians believe that when Satan tempted Jesus, that was a step too far, and went from being an adversary to humans to being an adversary to God. Regardless if the Satans fell during the time of Isaiah or Jesus, the fact of the matter is that they fell much later than what many traditions have them fall. Regardless, with the fall of the sons of God and Lucifer, there is now the issue of where to place them. It is clear in Isaiah that Lucifer will fall to Gehenna, the bottomless pit, but Gehenna is temporary. A more permanent solution is needed to house Lucifer and the fallen angels. The answer to that problem is presented in the New Testament with Hades, otherwise known as the lake of fire. The need to create a place for the fallen angels would explain why the lake of fire, the permanent place of punishment, would only be mentioned in the New Testament. There was no need for the lake of fire before the fall, and now that there has been a fall, a place for them to reside was needed. Hence, why the first time we learn of the lake of fire is when they had already fallen. It is for that reason why the lake of fire, nor Lucifer as a fallen, are in the Jewish tradition, and why it is not mentioned in the Old Testament. Why do you think Isaiah used future tense language in his prophecy about Lucifer? Why is it that there is no progression of afterlives in the Bible? Why is it that Satan was allowed into God's throne room and speak with God directly? When do you think Satan and the angels fell? Let me know in the comment section below. And for more Supernatural History TV, like and subscribe.